Valtteri, since you went last, I'll have you go first. So I'm going to be a little skeptical. I read research that says that people would virtually give up almost any device or thing that they use in their life before they would give up their cell phone. I mean, it's like the last thing people want. They'll turn the TV off before they'd give up their cell phone. There are also people similarly in love with their tablet. So I don't know that people want to add yet another device. So are you expecting people to give up their tablet, give up their larger size Kindle, give up their phone, or are you saying, well, yes, I'm expecting the consumer to add another device, and if so, why?
This works, okay. I think multiple platforms are a reality. We can't get away from that, and there are people who prefer highly interactive news use and all the power that tools give. We're not advocating that people would give up any of their mobile devices today. But hey, tell me, how many sheets of paper do you have at your home? So if you get the price point low enough, this can be included in your subscription. It replaces the sheets of paper in your home. You'll be happy.
Okay. All right, that may be fair. You know, we talked, actually Valtteri and I talked a long time yesterday, and we talked a lot about research, so I'm just going to do a quick research. I know you don't know enough about his product, but I'm going to ask a generic question. Another device comes out that is a single-purpose device. For the most part, you can get the same content on one of your current devices, but this one has certain, other features to it, but it's a single-purpose device. How many people here just say, without knowing any more, I would be generally inclined to add another device to my arsenal of devices I have today? How many people would think they'd add another device? Okay, good. All right, so there you go. All right, there we go. How about that for cheap research? All right. Jim, I have to ask the question, and you gave us, I think, a great kind of narrative about all the good things that came out of Thunderdome. But certainly, John has been one of the great evangelists for transformation in the newspaper industry. And when something that has been also something that he's touted, Thunderdome and other things, when it does fold, it shakes a little bit, I think, the industry and shakes the people that are writing about the industry. So kind of how do you deal with that? And maybe even the real important question, what does this mean for or about digital first media? Is there a larger narrative to this closing down than just it closing down? What can you tell us?
Well, I'll have to prepare for this question because I did not see that coming at all. But no, I mean, look, it's the bottom line is we have all these local properties, and the digital first media doesn't exist if it doesn't have these local properties, and that's where, in a time of tight, declining resources, the resources tend to go and should go to the papers that need to survive to serve those communities. And I think, as I said earlier, a lot of what we've been doing the last 2 years was trying to transfer those skills out into the field as much as we could. I'm not going to lie and say I didn't think we'd have more time to do it, or that I saw this particular day coming 2 months ago. But I certainly understand the logic that you have to focus on the property. At the end of the day, if digital first media doesn't have 75 dailies and a couple hundred weeklies out in the field somewhere, it doesn't have a soul to sort of build around. So hence when the decision came to trim somewhere, it came off the thing that was necessary and for a good period of time and did a lot of good work. But at that point, the money needed to stay in the field where we have to succeed. And what it says for the larger future of the company, I mean, I'm the editorial guy. They have a shock collar on me, so if I get too close to the suites, I get a shock. So I mean, I don't know what it means for the future. The future's only another 3 weeks for me there, but I mean, it's still a healthy, it still has really strong properties and a lot of really strong markets, and I do hope that, if anything, the legacy of Thunderdome is that it gives them a longer runway because they've learned skills that are really needed and necessary in the future.
So Penny, you talked about community newspapers, and you had a prescription there. I want to go back to the last thing that I had on my presentation and ask you, so even if you're a community newspaper, and let's say you did 10% of the page views of the Dallas Morning News in a year or in a month, so you're doing 4 million page views, which I think is a lot for some community and small papers. But the math I put on the board said you'd do $760,000 a year, 10% of that total. So print advertising, digital advertising, is that going to be enough for the community newspapers to make this transition and do it profitably going forward, or do they need to be doing other things than relying on advertising?
I think the quick answer is they need to be doing other things other than relying on the traditional way we viewed advertising, much as Carolyn talked about the sponsorships and a whole range of other things. I want to make a real important point about advertising, though, that I ran out of time, didn't get a chance to make. We tend to focus on digital advertising for the purpose it was invented under search, which is advertising has historically furnished at least provided at least 6 different advantages to advertisers. It can do everything from introduce a product to reinforce loyalty and get you to go back. Search advertising is very good if you know what you want to buy. It helps you get it much more efficiently. Newspapers, if they are positioned on multiple platforms, can do that much better, at least in a local market, than anybody else can. They know where print is used best. They know where to use digital. You put the two together, as I said, everybody from ESPN on, and certainly something we found, you're much more efficient if you're advertising on multiple mediums. So there is an advantage for newspapers right now that are still print, digital, and going mobile to really revamp the rate so it's not $1 plus 5 cents for being digital, but rather $1, not as much as the $1.50 it would get you to be on two, but you are still giving huge value to the advertiser on a rate card in which you can talk about the advantages of them for advertising on multiple medium, talk about the brand engagement, the brand loyalty, and the brand attachment, which my colleague who spent 20 years at BBDO will tell you is really important to advertisers. Brand attachment's at an even higher level than brand loyalty. So you're identifying with the brand too.
But you think they'll be able to make this on mostly some subscription revenue, obviously, and advertising?
The models we've done show that you're not going to get 20% margins. Those are way gone. What you want to do is preserve enough of a margin, 10%, 5%, I'm not sure where that is, but that you can afford to take on the kind of public service journalism you did in the past, which doesn't pay, makes the Chamber of Commerce and some advertisers temporarily mad. But it really does involve getting the right rate for what newspapers are doing, not basing it the way we've done it for the last 20 years. And you can do that in a local market.
Okay. So, Caroline, you get to talk to more newspapers than probably any human being in America, lucky you. And so you talk to large papers and medium papers and small papers and public companies and private companies and so forth. What are you hearing from newspaper companies in terms of how they're driving more revenue? What are they doing beyond the advertising? What are the things that you're seeing around the country?
I'll talk about an attitude that I sense, which is people really can you hear me now? Yeah, okay, sorry. People really try to understand their audience. So what might work in Minneapolis may not work in Charlottesville, et cetera. And they do a lot of sensitivity pricing vis-a-vis print and digital. And even the events they do are different depending on the market. So this notion of, I think the audiences have known our brands, but I'm not sure that we've really known our audiences. And so that's kind of an exciting change to see.
Okay. All right. So focusing on audience as opposed to, say, just focusing on products, but the audiences across those platforms and products. Okay. So let's turn it out to the audience and see if there are people who want to ask questions of anyone or a number of people on the panel. So I think I see someone right here. We're going to get a microphone, and there we go.
Hello. My name is J.C. Young, and I'm a professor at Texas State University, 30 miles south of where we are right now. So I have 2 questions. One is for Penny. So you said loyalty should be over multiple platforms, and we should build our community vertically. Any thoughts on how we can approach that to build our vertical community? So that's my first question. Let me finish. So my second question is for Carolyn. There's one chart you showed us that we're seeing now. We have more kinds of revenue instead of back in 2003 is mostly advertising.
Right.
And actually, Jim last year talked about how Dallas Morning News is having different kinds of revenues. So, in terms of total number, do we have more revenues right now, or we are not catching up with 2007?
No, it's less. I mean, I find that transformation is all the more incredible because in the last 8 or so years, the entire total revenues for advertising has just about been cut in half. And I think people recognize that increasing has got to be diversifying.
Let me answer the question you had about how you build community in various ways. What we did, we went in and did a very simple loyalty test. It can be done by the smallest of newspapers. We basically put an online survey in. We also did a lot of one-on-ones. And you ask maybe 10 or 12 questions that helps you segment your audience by how their customer habits are changing, what their interests are. The last question you ask is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being highest, would you recommend this to a friend or colleague? So loyalty is only if you give it a 9 or a 10. We count for grade inflation. One of the things that we found is that loyalty is determined, people told us over and over again, loyalty is determined by whether the newspaper is viewed as being the most credible and comprehensive source of news and information they care about. So you can think about it as 3 C's, but the most important C is care about. So you then dig deeper and you say, what do you care about? Even in small communities, we found 6 different communities of special interest. So like in a little Whiteville, circulation 10,000, we had 200 students worked on this project. They came up with 6 different communities. Included everything from sports of all sorts to plugged-in parents to texting teens to curious citizens, the home for the holidays crowd, front porch neighbors. And what you then start doing is building a community section page or whatever across multiple platforms. What we also found is loyalty is highest among those who use both editions. So they look for the online to give them information they didn't get otherwise.
Okay, another question out there somewhere. Is there a question? Okay, somewhere. After this one, if you have a question to follow up, if you'd raise a hand, we can get a mic in your hand and kind of keep it moving a little bit more quickly.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. My question is to the man with the new gadget.
That's you.
I like the idea that it's solar charged. How long does it last, after it has been charged? And how useful is it in a place like Finland?
I think he just slammed Finland, I think.
Where half of the year is darkness. Thank you.
Okay, let me answer. So we have the most demanding test lab in the planet. So yes, it works. And right now, this is the first version, and it's not actually solar or sun. With sun, we can get lots of energy, plenty for any use. But it's the lamps indoors, and we have those in Finland too. Okay, 10 hours of normal living room lights. Gives you like 1 full newspaper today, like downloaded on this, and 2 people reading it from the beginning to the end on this first version, and we can get way beyond this going forward. So we talk about maybe a handful or 10 updates over the day. If you want to have an evening edition, morning edition, a couple of newspapers, some magazines, these things we can do with just light.
I think one of the interesting things that Valtteri suggested to me yesterday, given the geography of Texas, how hard it is to get some metropolitan newspapers out into the farthest reaches of their DMA, that perhaps some of the customers out there would love to have this because we can't afford to send the print paper there anymore, and they really want an experience closer to the real paper, not so much, maybe an app or an HTML5 designed site. Next question, right here somewhere.
I have a question for Penny. It's Jonathan Groves from Drury University. I can't wait to read your book, and I'm glad that you're doing the site with that. I think that's a great resource to people who are interested in preserving community journalism, like many of us are interested in it. I was interested in when you were talking about loyalty, and you talked about what they see as being most credible and comprehensive part. I wondered if any of your research looked specifically at what types of content these loyal users were looking at, because it's one thing to say they see the entire institution as being credible, but does that necessarily mean they're looking at the watchdog type journalism that we all want to see preserved?
No, it gets back to the notion of what do you really care about. So, and that's why I said that the real challenge for newspapers is both to continue to give this geographic identity to a place that's so important politically, but also to honor the notion that we all have special interests. So a community needs to think about itself as being the glue that binds a community newspaper, the glue that binds a community in both politically, economically, as well as socially. So in many ways, these other special interests are vertical interests that don't relate back. The good news is these vertical interests have revenue that goes with them. Advertisers want to reach those very committed consumers, and if you are very smart in the way you deliver the news, you can get somebody who cares about prep sports to care about what's coming up at the school board in the same way you get somebody who's a curious citizen to care about it. So it's really a matter of rethinking about your audience. It's back to getting what your audience is and what they care about and knowing them in a way that we haven't in the past, so that they're not a circulation statistic.
Okay, question right up here.
Yeah, first a comment. Actually, I'm correcting some facts. In June, in Finland, we have 24 hours light. You don't need any lamps. Secondly, I wanted to ask Valtteri that what you talking about that the new e-paper is actually the cost is a fraction of the current newspaper cost or whatever. So what is a fraction of the cost? How much would it cost? What's compared to the print newspapers? And who's picking up the bill? Publishers or who?
So how big order would you like to place?
I'm not interested in orders. You just tell me what's the price.
No, that's the mobile business. The device business, it turns around the volumes. So we need to get up with the volumes, and the price will go down with that. And compared to the tablets or Kindle, like I said, then we will go down in like a order of magnitude lower bracket in the volume. So in volumes, like when we cross the level of million, we probably can go to really tens of US dollars, like I had in my slide. So is that good enough? That's very forward-looking statement.
All right, do we have another question up there somewhere? Right here, question right here.
I've been listening to this symposium since the morning, and I'm a little surprised when it builds itself as an international symposium, how America-centric it has been. I'm not saying this to be rude, well, not to be just rude, but I do have a question about, for Caroline perhaps, does the American newspaper industry see a source of revenue outside America? And I mean, I live in Nepal, where a small country is actually printing the International Herald Tribune every day as a daily newspaper. And a lot of our media are carrying pages of your newspapers and full pages every day. So I'm just wondering, is this not a source of revenue which you're very interested in, or does it not really yield volumes?
Not to the best of my knowledge, other than for national newspapers, but there's a good chance I could be wrong. I do know that, I suppose with a number of American newspaper companies do make money from printing other parties' materials. But in terms of licensing outside national newspapers, I don't know. And I can see your point about international versus American.
Okay, question right here.
I was just going to ask, why is it that you think that media companies haven't just stolen the business model from cell phone carriers of bundling devices with our subscriptions and simply making that work for our advantage? I don't understand that, especially with tablets. Why don't we just sell tablets with our subscriptions for 2 years and cut deals with those who manufacture them and turn that into our benefit?
Jim, who's the question? I'm sorry.
For anyone who wants to answer it, I've asked our own newspaper executives the question.
I can tell you one thing. Both the Los Angeles Times and the Philadelphia Inquirer tried to do that to much fanfare. They brought it out and told us that they were doing it. We never heard about it again. So now maybe they were prematurely. It was too early. Maybe what Valtteri has at a low price point is the answer. But I know that at least some newspapers have discussed the very thing, and two tried. Apparently didn't succeed, but that doesn't mean they got it all right. Maybe others want to respond.
Yeah, okay, maybe I'll comment some things here. Regarding the usage of tablet and bundling that as a kind of media company offering, there's many trials around that, and oftentimes it goes so that really you need to lock down the thing and prevent usage of certain applications, because they are so popular. The time goes there. It's if you want to have your brand on the top, people focusing on that, a focused device might be a better choice. And people don't necessarily react very positively if you kind of lock down things and prevent them doing things that they are used to do with a tablet or other thing. And then another, I don't know, was a comment about my kind of in a way hints what I gave. I meant more maybe the technology industry, the device manufacturers, the solution creators there, of course, and the platform companies and more the kind of computing services and not necessarily the mobile operators. But that's the place, so-called technology industry, which is driving the digitalization, and they are putting out the solutions, and the media industry is basically settling for them and taking the level of usability as kind of the thing that it's nowadays. But you don't need to settle for that. There are opportunities to really picking it up and making the thing to serve really the needs of.
If I could just add real briefly, I mean, I think we were talking about how so much of digital is about consumer choice. I don't think like giving some, I think people want to buy a device and then decide what apps they want on it. I don't think they want to buy something that's bundled with a bunch of brands they may or may not want, especially if that has any impact on the price point at all. I just think people would rather buy the device they want than put the content on it they want and have it be top to bottom their choice. And I think it's hard to impose on the consumer, like you must have these brands. And so I think that's a tough sell, because I think it goes against the tide of how consumers behave.
Okay, so we're out of time except for one quick answer down the line. Same question to everybody. How long will you be able to get a print newspaper if you want it?
It depends on where you live. At least for 10 years if you're in a remote area. And how many days a week are you wanting it?
Okay. Okay, how about in Finland?
Finland, they say that this year, by the end of this year, the northern half of Finland, it's not profitable anymore. It will stop if the kind of distribution solution is not there. There's like a pretty monopolistic distribution, and the prices are being raised aggressively. But metropolitan area for a very long time, I think.
Don't you guys have like aren't you one of the best wired countries in the world? Your infrastructure in Finland is much stronger than in certainly the U.S.
Well, I
just
probably.
All right, how long, Caroline?
I think you'll be able to get a printed newspaper for as long as I'm around. I'm not that old.
All right, we're there. Okay, Jim.
It's really hard. There's so many different variations, but I think the majority of probably dailies will not be printing in 7 years.
Okay. Thank you all our panels. Thank you to the ISOJ, and thank you to
Thank
Roosevelt.
you.